YouTube community, Black Sabbath fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens, and we are here today to finally chat about Paranoid, Black Sabbath's second album, which came out in late 1971, an album that has gone down in history as one of the most vital, important, and influential releases in the metal and hard rock genres. In June of 1970, only a few months after the release of their first album, the iconic Black Sabbath, they went back to the studio intended to make an album called War Pigs based off the song they had at the time called War Pigs, an anti-war song about how horrible and toxic and manipulative governments are in creating wars and sending people out to fight that don't want to be there. And Warner Brothers was like, we're not going to lean with that one, do something else. And they were almost done with their record, eventually, as the process went on. And they needed some more songs, or at least one more song, and they banged out Paranoid within like 30 minutes. It just completely knocked out of the park, and Warner's was like, all right, well, let's go with that. Even though the cover artwork was done, they had this guy with a giant sword and a shield. It was going to be called War Pigs. Just looks fitting, but Paranoid being one word, maybe they like that better, but, Paranoid as an album is great, and the cover does look kind of maniacal enough to be some sort of paranoid state. So I dig what they eventually did with it, but to think what could have been. When the Paranoid single came out in September 1970, it became their only top 10 charting hit in the UK, and their album followed in October. The album didn't come out until January of 71 in America, and it took a couple months to end up charting pretty high, where it hit number 12, and then went on to sell like 4 million copies or something on the Warner Brothers label. It was on Vertigo in the UK, but just an incredible beast of a record, produced by Roger Bain and recorded at Regent Sound Studios and Island in London. This thing is just, if you have one Sabbath album in your collection, this is probably the one you're going to have. War Pigs, one of the most incredible opening riffs of all time, that sludgy, heavy, just running through molasses feel. That intro is absolutely incredible. And then you get the sirens wailing on top, and it comes to a screeching halt, and you're left with just Bill hitting that hi-hat, and the silence is deafening. And then they all crash in at the same time. And then Ozzy comes in vocally, and you're like, you hear this world-weary voice, this voice of wisdom, this voice of knowledge and common sense, talking about how awful war is and what it's doing to people, and how governments create wars and shove people over to fight each other, and it's how messed up it is, how toxic it is, and how the system works and how the system's broken. This is an incredible anti-war song, and the spirit in their performances is so fiery and so charged up and almost angry to a certain degree. For an album that was recorded in standard tuning, this is the most evil sounding standard tuning album of all time, but the way they all play off each other's strengths is incredible. The way the song builds in this beautifully rockin', height of heavy metal extravagant craziness is amazing. It's a song that will always inspire new generations to rock and new generations to be aware of the world that they live in and what their role is and what they're forced to play. It's an incredible track, and something that, if you're new to Black Sabbath, this is one of those songs you absolutely need to digest and live with. And no matter how many times I've heard this song, you always rock out to it. It's incredible. Speaking of Paranoid, that came up next, a slightly drug-influenced, slightly depression-influenced track, mostly written by Geezer. It's a single that hit the top 10 in the UK. I mean, wow, Black Sabbath in the top 10. It's one of the most instantly recognizable guitar riffs of all time. The reverb on Ozzy's voice is ghostly and creepy. The cymbals are splashy, the bass chugs along. This track about finding peace and the struggle to get there, and maybe not even getting there, is fascinating, because when you have lyrics that are, weary and anxious and tense, and then you have Ozzy sing them, because his voice was so raw and intimate and honest, and there was nothing about him that was like, let's put auto-tune on this. Ozzy's voice was just so from the heart, so from the soul. And when you hear him sing these songs about like working really hard to achieve something and not finding it, there's not usually happy endings with these songs. And I mean that with a lot of these tracks in this album, and a lot of their songs actually deal with some sort of heartbreak or pain or world weariness, or if you're a bad person, this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to go to hell. You're going to see Satan flapping his wings and smiling and laughing at you. That's what's going to happen if you're a bad boy. Planet Caravan is a gorgeous track that is quiet and gentle and patient. Geezer's bass rolls along so warmly underneath it all, and Bill's bongo playing is calm and effective, and the little riffs that Tony does are just incredible, and Ozzy just kind of soars and lilts vocally on top of this whole track about, instead of going out with your sweetie to get dinner or something, let's just drive through outer space for a while. Let's go somewhere else completely far out and see where it takes us. It's a gorgeous track, and it proves that they were way more than just the heavy hitter guys that, when they wanted to scale it back, even this early on in their career, they could nail it. And then you get Iron Man, another one of the most iconic guitar riffs of all time. Hugely epic, hugely menacing, and, one of those riffs that has inspired probably millions of people to pick up the guitar. But lyrically, what a song. It's a guy sent from the future who, on the way back to the past, gets created and turned into metal or steel. And then as he's trying to tell the people about what the future is like and how horrible it's become, they don't listen. And so he gets pissed off and becomes the destruction he warned everybody about. What a concept. Electric Funeral. This song has always sounded like if fire and water were hanging out together. It sounds watery, but it sounds fiery and menacing. It's a really messy riff that almost sounds drunk for a while. Pretty much Iron Man Part 2. It's like, hey, you didn't listen, so here's the world that you're left with now, and this is what you got to deal with. I love Bill's cymbal work on this one. Again, adding into that watery, percussive kind of feel. Ozzy sings with his evil wisdom. It's just heavy goodness. And I love how the jam leads to the switch up in the middle of the song to get to the faster part. What a track. Hand of Doom is another pretty heavy track as well, about vets coming back with drug addictions, particularly heroin. And, they sing about it pretty much bluntly on the nose, about the needle in the arm and the holes. The bass is so huge on this song, and the quieter moments allow for the more explosive moments to be just that, very bombastic and in your face. I love how the song changes, it ebbs, it flows, it takes you on a journey. It's almost like taking you through the heavens and the hells of addiction, and ultimately, again, leaving you without that resolve. No happy ending. Rat Salad is a really cool jam with just a monster drum solo in the middle from Bill. His playing is so punctual and fluid, and he's really laying into the tom drums with a little bit use of cymbals here and there, which is my kind of drum solo. I want a drum solo. I don't want a cymbal solo. Anybody can play the cymbals. You gotta rock out on the drums, and he just does this so well, which leads to the last track, Fairies Wear Boots. And like I've said before, another example of standard tuning guitars sounding absolutely menacing. This song, it falls so easily into the bouncier rhythm, and it's either about, so no one in the band remembers what the song is about, but there's so many different stories of what it could be about. One of the theories is that literally they were high, or Ozzy was high, and had this image of fairies dancing around wearing boots, and then, in the story, he tells his doctor about it, and the doctor's like, yo, kid, stop getting high, you're seeing things. Another story is that the guys were walking home one night or something after a rehearsal or after a show, and they walked by a bar, and a bunch of punk skinheads, were yelling at them and calling them homophobic slurs because they had long hair. And you have to remember, there were still a lot of people at that time that didn't like the whole long hair thing. I mean, even a few years earlier, a young David Bowie, started the Society for the, advancement of long-haired men without getting abused, or I forget what it was called, but, having long hair was a big deal. And so they may have been called a couple of really terrible homophobic slurs on the way home and wrote about that. We don't know. This particular copy, I believe, is a Vinyl Me Please copy from a handful of years ago at this point, maybe 10 years ago, 2016, 17, somewhere in there. But, your standard gatefold, standard back cover. But this one is on a really, really beautiful purpley marble color, and it just looks so sharp. It sounds fantastic. I mean, the richness on this record is unreal. It's very in the room with you. The bass is dynamic. The top end is super clear. The guitars are crunchy. The drums are so crisp. It's an excellent sounding LP. You know, a lot of their reissues, I would say Black Sabbath's early albums have had a lot of luck with being pressed really well in the last handful of years. So a lot of the modern reissues that you'll pick up with these records sound phenomenal. Sabbath made a lot of incredible albums with Ozzy, and you can't go wrong with any of them. But if you're going to own one, if you want to get into Black Sabbath and you want to kind of learn what they're all about and get an idea of the riffs and the world-weary lyrics and kind of what their idea of what heaven and hell, good and evil was, and, you know, what you had to do to avoid the bad parts and stay in the good parts, this is a great album to get into. This is definitely the gateway Black Sabbath album. You know, they made so many more incredible records. I love Masters of Reality, and the first one's amazing. And Volume 4 is, of course, incredible. But Paranoid is undeniably cool. It's got the big hits on it. It's got a lot of the songs you're going to hear on the radio these days. It's got the riffs. It's got the lyrics. It's got the tension, it's got the anxiety, it's got the performance, and it's got the spirit. You know, they were young and hungry, and this album really shows that they wanted to take on the world and, you know, show who they were. So this is easily a 10 out of 10. It's one of the best hard rock and metal influenced albums of all time. The power that this album has with anybody who's ever picked up a guitar since its release is undeniable. Just truly an amazing record. So if you haven't heard it, pick it up for yourself. If you have heard it, go back and play it again because it's just one of the best albums ever made. Black Sabbath Paranoid, 10 out of 10, hands down. My name is Giggens. Thank you so much for watching this video. Tell all your friends. But yeah, Black Sabbath Paranoid, 10 out of 10. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Stoked to talk about some Sabbath with you guys. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care of yourselves. See ya.